We got married and then 2.5 days later, he left for 4.5 months. There's been a lot of loss, whether it's miscarriages, failed rounds. Trying to balance that with work and having a life as well is a real challenge, and it's getting to a point now, 4 years on, where it kind of feels like there's no end in sight. Well, it should just be a description, but it is used often in a slightly derogatory sense, which is really disappointing. Yet cricket wag, Erin does something, and I'm like, oh well, it's not even in the context of cricket a lot of the time too. It's just a label that's used to quantify your existence in the media sometimes. I think if you don't like cricket, I would want you to come to a game with me in India of the IPL, and I think it'd be impossible for you not to fall in love with it because the atmosphere is just palpable.
Erin Holland, finally, welcome to the Stellar Podcast.
I'm so excited to be here. This is seriously such an honour.
Oh my God, you and I have been talking about this for a while on the Instagram DMs, which is the official platform,
obviously,
of all podcast booking globally, I'm sure. But look, I'm really glad that we were able to get you into the studio today. I mean, I thought I had a bit of a commute in my, 25-minute drive over here. You, I believe, are just off a plane internationally. We're in Sydney today, where you live 4 days of the week.
Give or take.
Do a bit of a commute. Your husband, you both live in Brisbane. So, I mean, how does this commute, long-distance marriage, multiple planes, catching planes the way some of us catch Ubers?
Literally.
I mean, how are you feeling? Do you even know what day it is? If I said to you, where are you today? Would you be able to answer me, or would you have to think what continent, what state, what city?
I mean, it sounds dramatic, but I do have to think like that sometimes. It's been an amazingly busy last couple of years, I suppose, to be fair. And I've just got off the plane from Hong Kong as we record this, which was awesome. I haven't had a lot of sleep, to be honest, and I leave again to go to Abu Dhabi in about 4 days' time, and there's a lot to do between now and then. So said husband in Brisbane, won't actually see him until Abu Dhabi because he's actually playing in this same cricket comp that I'm hosting, which is nice. So we will be on the same continent for once. But yeah, it's been a hectic year, and I think the only good thing about having such a busy schedule is I don't actually have a body clock to stuff up anymore. So jet lag's not really a thing. It's just general tiredness. It's like, have I slept 8 hours at all in the last 24? No, no, I haven't. But yeah.
So when the world slowed down and international travel was put on hold during that thing that, feels far and far away. So I think we can talk about it now with a little bit of hindsight, hopefully. I'm talking about, of course, the global pandemic, otherwise known as COVID. How did that recalibrate for you?
It was a reset, and it was very strange to be in one place for such a long period of time. I live between Sydney and Brisbane, so I was born in Cairns, moved to Sydney for university when I was 17 years old, and I've been here ever since, and I've called this home. And then I had to meet someone who lived in a different state, but to be fair to me, was never really in that state for very long anyway, being an international cricketer. And Ben was based in Brisbane, so I've been doing this commute up and back for my relationship, let alone the domestic and the international travel for work. So COVID, at least for the first year, really halted all of that travel. And I had so much anxiety and stress being in the one place for a really long time because that's not what my life has been like. I've always lived in a number of different cities, whether it was Cairns and Sydney during my uni years, whether it was Sydney and traveling for work, or then Sydney and Brisbane for my relationship. So I actually physically felt unwell. I went through periods of knots in the stomach and stress of not knowing when my life was going to go back to normal, and then periods of being on my own because sport was always considered essential. So Ben was always away, even during COVID years. And it changed where broadcast was allowed to start traveling towards the end of the first year of COVID, and I started to travel again as well. So it was probably only about 6 months that I didn't go anywhere. But yeah, it was really strange. And actually, it was the only time Ben and I have ever lived together for longer than about 2 or 3 weeks at a time. So it was before the wedding. And I went, at least I know I can live with you.
Yeah, good test. Part of the premarital road test.
Yeah, which is crazy to think. And yeah, it's been a long distance relationship and a long distance marriage really for the last almost 5 years since we got married.
The fact that you have this really unique setup that works for the two of you, I love the fact that we as a society, for the most part, are becoming more and more open to different ways that work for different people, you know, what families look like in all shapes and sizes. And this is certainly something that we've spoken about here on this podcast. I mean, one immediate example, for instance, apart from, you know, blended families and all sorts of situations, would be Edwina Bartholomew, Channel 7 presenter, who first really spoke to Stella about the fact that she and her husband, you know, were spending part of the week in separate houses because of the nature of her work, you know, getting up at some ungodly hour. You know, he was home with their two children, and that really sparked a lot of discussion. For you, how does that work, and what's been the reaction from people? Do friends and family ever say to you, when do you and Ben ever see each other?
Oh, constantly. People came to our wedding who'd never met him. People who were big parts of my life. And I think that's just like, yes, some people go, oh, alarm bells, but it is just the reality of two people that have careers that travel. So, you know, many people know what it's like to have a FIFO family member, but we kind of both are in our situation. And I think in what we do, it's meant that there's not that resentment. There is someone always feeling like they get left behind if you both kind of leaving each other behind 24/7, which sounds terrible, but particularly for, I suppose, most of our relationship to date, it hasn't mattered because there weren't kids at home. There weren't things being left behind other than, I suppose, the other person. But, you know, we had similar stresses in our work lives. We had similar schedules. If you had to cancel on something last minute or not be able to go on a family holiday because I got a great job, he got picked for a team, an amazing opportunity came up. We know in this world, and sport and entertainment are so similar. Sport is entertainment, and the entertainment industry for me is sport. So it is very interlinked, and the understanding we have of each other's careers, it's what's actually kept us together, which I think in sometimes situations where someone has more of a 9 to 5 or a quote unquote regular job with regular hours, a lot of issues and resentment and sadness can sometimes come from that lack of just living that experience. And I think, like so many things in life, unless you actually live an experience, you don't really understand what it's like. So blessedly, we have known and appreciated what the other person goes through. And I think that's what's kept us together. And it sounds like so silly, but like communication, like that's the most important thing, right?
And understanding one another. And as you say, no one can really understand someone else's experience, however empathetic or intellectual you may be about it, until you've lived it. And you've literally both lived that existence. So
for sure. But I mean, like, you know, we got married, and then 2.5 days later, he left for 4.5 months because it was COVID. And we got married in that little window after cancelling it 3 times in a row in February 21. And then at that point, players had exemptions to leave the country, but broadcasters kind of weren't really in that same boat. So I didn't see him for 4.5 months. So I spent my honeymoon doing SAS Australia because I was like, well, I can't go and see him. Yeah, I may as well test myself physically and push myself to the brink. That sounds healthy. Why not? You know, so even down to that, like nothing's ever been normal. But yeah, I'm okay with that. I think it kind of works for us.
I mean, doing SAS Australia for a honeymoon, of all the like amazing anecdotes and little funny facts that you have about your life, that is another one.
Like, how's married life? I'm like, I don't know. But I'm in the mud and I'm exhausted.
I mean, who needs to be at a 5-star resort drinking cocktails by the pool when you could be doing the crazy stunts that are required?
After doing that, I think I would have preferred the first option. But yeah, it's crazy, and we've had to, unfortunately, spend parts of time away from each other at really important moments in our life because that's what the work demands. But, you know, his career is finite and there's only a certain amount of time that he can play. And I know what it's like to have a passion and a goal and be in an industry that if you don't always take those opportunities in the moment, they may not be there tomorrow. So we've always afforded each other that grace. And I think that's really helped the understanding.
I wanted to go back because I think it's so interesting when you said during COVID, it was really the first time that you were living there together for so long. What did that show you about your relationship?
Yeah, I mean, I learned that I'm absolutely hopeless when it comes to domestic life, and he's a bit of a domestic goddess. So I think you should ask him what it's like to live with me, because I'm a bit of a hot mess at the best of times. But yeah, it actually surprised me at how well it did gel together, given what a pressure cooker environment we were all in, not knowing what the future of the world held for such a long time. And he's a very pragmatic, very relaxed, very measured individual. As much as I'm completely up and down, emotionally charged, like a kind of all over the shop individual. So I think we're a bit of a yin and yang, and that kind of actually worked really well together. He's an easy person to live with. And yeah, I mean, I did have those reservations as well. And I thought at the end of the day, this is a really nice test as to what, the future might hold. It was actually a really nice time to connect and spend some time together for the 6 months that he was there. And then he was off again playing sport because that was essential, apparently.
Just before I move on from this topic of you and Ben and your crazy lives and your living arrangement, I just wanted to ask, because I think part of this podcast is people getting an insight into one another's lives and seeing the world through a different lens and sometimes living vicariously through other people. So could I ask you to nominate one, you can give it to, what would be the best thing about living apart from your spouse for certain amounts of time, and what would be the hardest part of it?
One of the best things I think is the genuine excitement to spend time together. And I think when you live in someone else's pocket, you can take people for granted because they're just always there. And time is not fine. But time is precious, and I think that's really taught me how precious time can be when you don't get a lot of time with the people that you love. So you make the most of the quality time that you have together, and I think we're good at getting good minutes on the board of actually connecting and spending that time together. But then the worst part is that when you're going through things, when you're fighting, when you're whatever, like you really elongate those arguments because you don't want to waste time fighting or having really awful, deep, meaningful conversations sometimes, which need to happen because you only have finite time together. So, you can have the same argument for like 3 years, which is what I think can happen sometimes because you don't have time to sit there and really get into the weeds of something and work through it and have that discomfort. You don't want to waste your time on the discomfort. So that can be really difficult as well. I love that the honeymoon period literally lasts about 5 years for us, but then I don't love that we do have some of the same arguments over and over again because we haven't had time to kind of sit down and really deep them, if that makes sense. But then I love the fact that it never feels like there's enough time because I'm always so excited to spend time with him. So yeah, it's so weird. And I think the only thing I'd say about long distance relationships is, why do it to yourself? Well, I couldn't think of a world in which he wasn't in it. And I also couldn't think of a world in which I didn't still pursue the things that I loved and what I gave up everything for and what I've been working so hard for. So we kind of found that, why make all of these decisions about a future where you never know what life's going to throw at you? And we kind of take things day by day and situation by situation. And as life progresses and goes on its journey, you make do with what you're given. And I think that's the biggest thing because people go, why are you doing this to yourself? So I didn't know how to not be with him. I didn't know how to not do what I loved. So just kind of did what I could.
Erin, let's talk about cricket. As you and I are talking, it is peak cricket season here in Australia. And of course, as discussed, your husband is a cricketer and you host a cricket podcast, Beyond 23, with Michael Clark. I understand you're doing some live shows. Tell me a little bit about your relationship with cricket. Was it something that you were interested in growing up?
I grew up watching, living, breathing, loving the game from my dad and my brother. They both played cricket. It was always on the TV, very similar to you. A lot of backyard cricket in Cairns, decent-sized backyard, growing up regionally up there as well. And it was always a passion for me. I loved live sport. And I think the thing about sport and my background of growing up on stage is it's entertainment, right? Yes, I'm singing and dancing on the stage and they're performing with a bat and a ball on the stage. So I'm really interested in the performance aspect, the pressure that they go through, and then becoming a fan to being a broadcaster and then obviously having a relationship with a cricketer. I just find it fascinating how athletes go through what they go through, perform on the big stage. Like anything, the more you learn about something, the more you appreciate it and understand it. And I reckon if I sat down with you and went, all right, let's actually this is what cricket is. This is what's happening. imagine a ball coming at you 150 k's an hour and you have point something of a second to react. And if you go and actually stand in the middle of a stadium and look around you and realize the grandeur and how far they're hitting that ball, it's really impressive. So I loved and knew a lot about cricket before I met Ben, and it was very much a part of my life before he came along. And I think that's the only way that I can do what I do, having not actually played the game myself, because cricket's so technical. Every sport's so technical, and I think you get found out very quickly as a broadcaster if you don't have a really good working knowledge and an understanding of the game. So yeah, fan first, then relationship second, and then broadcasting third. But it's been a really nice natural progression, and it is such a big part of our lives. It's really fun to be a part of. Like, I feel like I'm not working. I get paid to watch cricket and talk about it. I used to do that for free with my friends and my family.
How have you noticed the Australian public's relationship with cricket evolve over the years? I mean, there was a time, for instance, where when former Prime Minister John Howard used to say, the two main people in Australia were the Prime Minister and the captain of the Australian cricket team.
We weren't asking about that bally bold either then. I'm sure people remember that. But, that the cricket captain was the second most important person in the country to the Prime Minister. I mean, obviously AFL exists, and I think we're very much a footy mad country for a lot of the year. But something about summer and the cricket is iconic, and whether or not you enjoy test match cricket, I think we all know what it's like to lounge in front of the TV and turn it on and watch people in white playing games that seem to go on forever, as most people say when it comes to test cricket. But no, I think it's really exciting, and Ashes is massive. Like, in terms of the rivalry in cricket, we love to beat England. It's always a really exciting time of year, and Boxing Day test is upon us at the moment, which is just one of the best times of the year. And yeah, it feels like there's a lot of transition happening in cricket at the moment. We've got an amazing team that is, kind of reaching towards the ends of their careers just because of age alone. So we're getting new influence through with some of these young guns that are making their way into the side. So it's a really exciting transition at the moment. And I think one of the interesting parts of being a broadcaster in sport at the moment now, and the way that we have access to players like never before thanks to social media, is we are getting to know people on a human level. And I think that never used to be like that. We never used to have access to people the way that we do now. And
it must be so fascinating, the places that you travel to, because the countries that it really captures. What an experience to have the opportunity to be embedded in those cultures.
I think if you don't like cricket, I would want you to come to a game with me in India of the IPL, and I think it'd be impossible for you not to fall in love with it, because the atmosphere is just palpable. It's impossible not to be excited about something when you feel, it's like an AFL grand final every single game, if you can imagine that. Packed out MCG, always hundreds of thousands of people milling around the stadium who can't get in and get a ticket. Like that's amazing. And to be a part of something that means so much to people, is awesome, and something that brings people joy. Like, the world's a pretty scary place at the moment, and there's a lot of sadness, and something that actually brings joy is awesome. It's such a privilege to be a part of that.
I have seen you as a sports broadcaster, and you really know your stuff, and I hope that doesn't sound patronizing. The reason I've said that is because female sports commentators, reporters, broadcasters are often held to a different standard. I think especially in cricket, it's really fantastic to see a woman front and centre, and now that you're also working with someone like Michael Clarke, tell me a little bit about that experience. Do you come up against any double standards from other people in the industry, from fans? And do you think that cricket is becoming, like other sports, has been reckoning about so many other sports, as traditional boys' club? Do you think it's becoming, cricket, a little more inclusive of women?
Oh, absolutely. I think even in the time that I've been doing this, which is about 6 years, I go back to these tournaments year after year, and there's more and more female broadcasters in the commentary box. And that is a wonderful thing to see. And countries like India, countries like Pakistan, the first time I would go there, you're one of maybe one or two, and all of a sudden now I'm one of 4 or 5. And that's really heartening to see, because I think every female broadcaster that perhaps wasn't a previous player in the sport has heard do you actually like cricket? And it's so, just, it makes my skin crawl. Yes, because otherwise, why would I do this? Why would I be here? The amount of work that it takes to, broadcast any sport. I don't think any person worth their salt ever gets on camera not knowing what they're going to talk about or having a passion. It's too hard. The sport has got such a huge history. It's been around for such a long time, and with so many passionate fans, you do everyone a disservice if you don't know your stuff. And yeah, I think coming from getting my first opportunity through my relationship with Ben, I really felt a lot of pressure to know my stuff and to earn my place. And to, I think so many industries, you get opportunities and people open doors for you because of who you know. But whether or not those doors stay open and you continue to walk through them, or people continue to throw them open for you, comes down to whether or not you're any good at your job. And I hope that the fact that I've been doing this for about 6-7 years now means that I am good at my job and people do like what I offer and what I bring. But I did feel that pressure for a long time. And I remember sitting down with Ben before my first ever gig, which was the IPL for 1.5 billion Indians who love that sport more than anything else. I really felt the pressure, and I was like, okay, I think I know what I'm doing, but like, run me through everything again. Give me all the good questions that you've ever been asked and all the bad questions that make you roll your eyes if you ever get asked. And, I've really tried to go above and beyond to make sure that I'm always offering something. And I think anyone should in any position. It's a very competitive industry. You need to continuously evolve like you do in any industry. Professional development, upskilling, staying abreast what's happening. That's incredibly important no matter what it is that you do. But I do feel like, as a female in sport, you always feel like, not that your time's, numbered, but that you do always have to be very much in the forefront of your game. And I wonder if maybe my male counterparts feel the same, probably because it's TV and it's cutthroat. But yeah, it is definitely something that's ever present in my mind. And I think for me, the way that I feel confident going into any performance is by being as prepared as I can be.
But I suppose that just before I move on from this subject is I've never really seen the word WAG attached to you, and I think that's because you have your own profile.
Oh, it has been. No, it has been.
It has been,
right. It still
okay.
does.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about that, what you think of the label, and, is there any sign of that reaching its expiration date? Or is it a term of endearment or something that can be embraced for some women as I suppose, a mantle of great pride and honour?
Well, it should just be a description, but it is used often in a slightly derogatory sense, which is, really disappointing. Yet cricket wag, Erin does something, and oh my God, well, if it's not even in the context of cricket a lot of the time too. It's just a label that's used to quantify your existence in the media sometimes. And it does frustrate me only because it is being used in that context. If it wasn't, then okay, great. But yeah, it's interesting how you get slapped with that sort of a title and you never seem to shake it no matter what you do, how long you've worked in an industry. And yeah, I think it does frustrate me because I think I've worked really hard to be where I'm at, and I've always had my own life and my own profile, irrespective of meeting my husband. I didn't come into this industry because of my husband. I was in the industry, and then I met him. So I feel like I was always kind of Erin Holland as Erin Holland, and maybe that's a big reason why I didn't change my name as well, to keep my own identity. Because I think once you are linked to someone of a profile, particularly a man, a sports person with a profile, you always get linked with them. And I'm very much an independent person with, my own life and what, my own career and what it is that I do. So, but, what the partners of players do is truly extraordinary. And I can only speak from my experience of cricket because they're the ones that I share a player's box with or travel with. But, they do so much. These boys, these women, they're away so much of the year. Cricket is a very 24/7 sport. You play cricket all through the year now with the way that the franchise leagues have popped up, the way that the ones that play for their countries as well as everything else could quite literally be on the road for 11, 12 months a year. So that is partners of players who are doing the heavy lifting at home, doing the heavy lifting with the children, also working their own jobs as well. Like it's an immense load of what they do. And I think often it's said in a glittery, you know, oh, what it must be like to be a wag. It's like, well, it's quite lonely a lot of the time, you know, and you get, as it's not it's not what it's cracked up to be. That's what I'd say. And I don't even do what I see a lot of my, you know, my friends go through with the players as well, who do have their families and they have to, you know, somehow make everything work given the fact that their partner's away 24/7. Like, I take my hats off to the other quote unquote wags, because, you know, it isn't easy, and being the partner of a player can be a very lonely existence too. And
Erin, you and Ben do not have children. Regular listeners of this podcast would know that is an observation that I make with your full consent and permission. And I'm not saying that to be quote unquote woke for anyone rolling their eyes at me, but because one of my big passionate values is having empathy and sensitivity as just fellow humans, family members, friends, but also as journalists and people in the media when discussing this issue. In 2022, you spoke to Stella. You'd recently been through your first round of IVF and you were sharing your fertility journey. Then 3 years on, in August of this year, you shared an update with your followers on social media where you explained you just had exploratory surgery to find answers to your fertility issues. Can I ask you what you're comfortable sharing with us as 2025 comes to a close, where you are with that journey?
2025 has been such a roller coaster. Probably going to cry. Sorry. It's been so difficult. There's been a lot of loss. Like, you know, whether it's miscarriages, failed rounds, trying to balance that with work and having a life as well is it's a real challenge. And it's getting to a point now, 4 years on, where it kind of feels like there's no end in sight. We've tried changing doctors as well just recently. So I used to see a doctor up in Brisbane. I'm now seeing a doctor down in Sydney just to try and take out some of the travel as well, because when you have to travel for appointments on top of everything else, I mean, anyone that's gone through IVF knows what a burden on your time it is. And I think the number one thing I've learned about IVF is that I knew it would be mentally draining, because obviously you're working towards something that you want so much. You have all the pressures of, I think as a woman these days, biology has not caught up with how we've progressed in society. So, you know, we want to have careers and work longer, but inevitably that makes conceiving harder the older that we get. So there's that to and fro of knowing when is the right time to even settle and attempt to have a family, let alone if you kind of know going in, which I did, that I would find it a challenging journey. But how taxing it is physically on the body. So I've actually just found out today, which is funny timing, that my 6 transfer didn't work.
Sorry.
And it's really hard to keep putting yourself through something, not knowing, you know, when it ends, and it's getting to a point where it's physically taxing, it's mentally taxing, it's financially taxing, it's and I think if you knew eventually it was all going to be worth it, you know, you do anything to make that your reality, if that is what you want for your life. But it's the unknown, and it's it's been a really tough year. I had an ectopic pregnancy, which ended up ending in a methotrexate injection, which is actually a chemotherapy drug to try and save the tube. That happened while I was in Melbourne at the F1 at the Grand Prix, and that, which was crazy. You know, I would never have travelled if I'd known that was a potential situation. But, you know, as is with with my life. I knew that I'd lost that pregnancy, but I didn't realize it was going to end up being as dramatic as it was. And I'm finding it really hard to balance still trying to live my life whilst I try and create a life. Yeah, it's getting to a point now where after so many years, you feel like, how much life am I not living trying to make this a reality? But if I stop trying, then it will never be a reality. And it's not just me that I have to worry about in this situation, it's my husband, because it's both of our dreams. So yeah, so you get to a point where, you know, how much can one person take? But if you make the decision to stop, then a whole part of life, which is something that we've chosen to want in our lives. And I'm a huge advocate of what is right for me is not right for you, is not right for everybody. But we've decided we want kids, and yeah, it's just, yeah, how much do you push? How far do you go? How much is enough? When do you stop? Because I've done 12 rounds now, maybe. Yeah, it's a lot.
Thank you so much. I'm so sorry to hear your latest news as well, and I really thank you for being so generous, because I do know that the generosity and the bravery, and I don't use that word lightly, of women such as yourself that do share your story while you're in the middle of it. And as you say, Erin, you're living your life while you don't know the outcome and making decisions, not knowing that. To then share that story is genuinely, I wish I could find other words, but it is both generous and brave. What's been the response from people, and is it harder to have these conversations and experience what you're experiencing in private than knowing that there could be people like me asking about it, but also social media followers? Or is it heartening knowing that, you know, whatever is happening, that your story is resonating with someone, and maybe, I mean, not maybe, definitely making, I'm sure, a lot of women, and I'm sure men, feel a lot less alone?
I think what's obvious in the last 5 minutes is I wear my heart on my sleeve, and I find it very hard to pretend that everything's okay when it's not. And I thought, you know, social media is supposed to be a way for people to connect with other people. It keeps us, you know, abreast of what's happening in the world, with our friendship groups, with the people that we like to follow or look up to, or whatever it is. And when I first started my journey back in 2022, so yeah, 4 years ago now, and I was going through the embryo creation process, knowing that I was going to have issues when I did eventually start to try. I kind of wanted to kind of secure my future, in, so to speak, for when the time I got my head around the time of being ready to try. And not a lot of people share in real time, and I understand why that is, because it is just so hard, and every day is different. You know, you might have asked me the same question tomorrow and I would have been fine and not burst into tears on you and been able to speak about it in a much more eloquent way. But I found I wasn't a lot of people who were doing that in real time, and all I was after was someone to explain to me what they were going through, what it felt like, what's been happening, how are you coping, and no one was really doing that. So I sort of thought, if I could be that resource for someone, if I could just be one post out of the probably 20 that poor person saw that day, of pregnancy announcements or baby showers or success stories, when you feel like you're the only one that's broken and isn't having success, then, you know, that's, if I can cope with that, which most days I can, then I'm really happy to be that person for someone. And it's the kind of thing that once you actually start talking about it with people, everyone knows someone who's had the experience, whether it's the person you're actually talking to or their sister or their brother or whatever it is so much more common than people think. And I'm so glad that we're talking about it more and more these days, because like anything, all people want to feel like is like they're not alone, and they're not the only one that has something wrong with them. And I think the way that algorithms work as well on social media is, once you hit a certain age, like I'm 36 now, so obviously they're like, oh, baby making territory. Let's give her every baby announcement, every fertility post every whatever it is, and because you engage once or twice, it feels like sometimes you log on and that's all you see. And when you're in a vulnerable state of mind, that's really, really, really tough. So, people have felt like that they can connect with me and message me and share their stories, and I make sure that I get back to every single person when I'm physically and mentally able to thank them for sharing, and to hopefully have some sort of a conversation that makes them feel a little bit less alone as well.
Because you spoke so eloquently there about the fact that you and your husband Ben are navigating the unknown and the toll that this is taking on you physically, emotionally, financially, logistically, which also are things that I don't think we talk about enough as a society. And for what it's worth, really applaud you for doing that. You are still young, you're 36. Do you have a timeline? Do you have a cut-off point, a line in the sand? Some thoughts have been surfacing while you've been speaking that have reminded me of a previous guest on the podcast, Elizabeth Day, who, of course, I'm sure you're familiar with your work, who's spoken so eloquently through different parts of her journey, including the quote-unquote closure, that terribly overused word, but it is something that we all seek, whatever we're in, and that side of it. But is even me talking about that a little bit preemptive or disrespectful, because there's a defeatist component of being prepared for all outcomes? I hope that long-winded question has made some sense, assuming that you're happy to answer it and it does make it onto air.
I think that's a very logical question to ask when you see someone who's been going through something for such a long time. You're kind of like, what? How long do you want to do this to yourself for? And my answer to that is, well, how long's a piece of string? I don't know. Every day is different, and I feel differently every day. And look, that's probably the hormones and the drugs as well speaking there. But I also say to them is, this is a decision I can't take back in terms of if I am to have my own child biologically. There are obviously other options to explore should I reach the end of the road of what I'm able to take physically. And I also say that it is a joint decision. So the decision that I make also impacts my husband and his ability to have a family one day. So it's a ever-changing beast. And I guess my answer is I go for as long as I can, and I don't know how long that would be. It's I guess it's impossible to answer, and I just have to kind of take it day by day and failure by failure. And we are making progress in terms of troubleshooting what the issues are, which is heartening to know. And I'm in a very privileged position where, whilst it is obviously a financial toll, it is still one that I and my husband are able to afford to do, and not everyone can do that. So I'm very privileged to be able to continue to give this a go. And I'm very grateful that science exists. Otherwise, someone like me would have had no chance.
I obviously wouldn't ask you to speak for Ben, but as a partner, as a couple, as a team that we've spoken about, and the fact that you're in this together, but there's also the logistics of the fact that, as we discussed in the earlier part of our conversation, what your lives look like with two big careers and lots of travelling. How does that play out with the two of you? Are there times where you wish that he was closer, purely through the prism of the topic that we're discussing here?
Of course. And I think when we first started years ago now, so I've been doing transfers for over 2 years, we were both at every appointment together. It was a priority to make sure that everyone was present, and that support is incredible. And no matter where he is in the world, I always have his utmost love and support. But after you've been doing it for a while, it's just impossible to be available for every single appointment. I say that because, in every cycle, you'd have 2 or 3 or 4 scans. You'd have several blood tests. There's the transfer. There's the fact that you think it's going to be on this date and then your body doesn't play ball, so it pushes out another week or another whatever it is or something. Like, it's such an ever-changing beast. It's the amount of time that it takes out of your schedule to even do a round of IVF is hard enough for anyone, let alone people that kind of live in two different cities as well. So we're there for each other as much as humanly possible. There are times where I've done a transfer and he's been in another country because it pushed out by a week and he wasn't able to be there. And I didn't want him to cancel his life because, like I said before, is how much of your life do you stop living while you're trying to do this? And I've done rounds where I've taken a complete step back from work and travel. It hasn't worked. I've done rounds where I've done everything as normal and it hasn't worked. So it's impossible to know what the answer is as to what version of me living my life will hopefully end up making it work. But in terms of, that there's supporting each other and being there for each other, sometimes it has to be over the phone because there's just only so much you can do. And when you've done 12 rounds of this, if you think about the number of appointments and the number of opportunities and things that are missed on both parts because you have to rearrange, it gets to a point where you're like, that's okay. I want you to go and play that comp. I've got this. I can do this on my own this one time or whatever it is. And that's where my family, my extended family, in terms of like my friends and everyone who've really stepped up for me and picked me up from hospital or dropped me off or helped me do whatever it is.
Erin, thank you again for being so candid and generous there with your story. It really does, I know, mean so much to so many people. And before we wrap up, I'm going to just move on to some slightly happier tidings.
I can breathe again.
We end on, you can absolutely breathe again. I was going to see if I needed to find a box of tissues for you, but can I just say genuinely, if anyone didn't know that you are a model and a former Miss World, they would definitely know, former Miss World Australia, they would definitely know by looking at you because you did shed a few tears there, and most of us mere mortals would look terrible and splotchy. You look like you could be on the cover of a magazine, which by the way you are today, but we could go and get your shot right now. So,
Stop it. Stop it. It's
but
good makeup.
No,
Great makeup.
But I'm wearing makeup and trust me, it wouldn't be helping. Happy to stop if you need a tissue, but I think genuinely look fantastic. But that just is a clumsy segue into part of your background, which is, as I say, as a model. And then you became really prominent. First were introduced to the Australian public when you were Miss World Australia, which was 2013. So,
oh God,
12 years ago.
Stop it, I feel old.
But of course, you're also a classically trained soprano, and you you've just performed again at the Carols in the Domain. Also perform a lot. I've seen you multiple times sing the national anthem, which, last year was at Supercars. You've done a lot of racing events. Is there anything left to tick off the bucket list in your capacity as a singer and entertainer?
Oh, absolutely. My career's taken a completely different U-turn as to what I thought I was going to do. And I wanted to be on Broadway and on West End. I grew up just wanting to perform and be on stage. And whilst I definitely get that part of my personality fulfilled by being on television, being a broadcaster, I still want to do a show one day. And I know you and I bond over musicals very regularly. Yeah. I think Wicked was my first ever professional audition, closely followed by Hairspray all those years ago. I think it must have been 2011 maybe, when I had graduated from the Sydney Conservatorium and was starting out in this industry. And I desperately want to do a show one day. I go to every musical opening. I'm so lucky that I get the opportunity to do that, being in the industry, getting those invites. And it's the one thing that I'm still yearning to do.
Given what we've just talked about, classically trained as a soprano, model, Miss World Australia 12 years ago, television presenter, sports broadcaster, podcast co-host, brand ambassador, a lot of, different hats there. Talking at the beginning of our conversation about jet lag, don't even know what that is anymore because, every day you're at an airport. When you're putting down, maybe city of origin, country of origin, you might have to think about that twice. When it says occupation, what do you write?
Oh, I used to always write singer. These days I'm kind of writing TV host a lot more because genuinely usually when I come back into country, I've come back from a a sports broadcasting presenting gig. So I feel like that's a little bit more appropriate. But I love being a slashy. I think that's what's kept me alive in this industry for so long. I've had to do a number of different, jobs to make ends meet. And I'm just so grateful that at least I had a skill set in a number of different areas that meant that I could survive, living in Sydney, which is not the cheapest, as we all know. And like, I genuinely love what I do. And I'm so grateful that I get to follow my passion and that my passion pays me enough to pay the bills and to be able to do it.
Well, I am grateful that you fit the time and the GPS took you here to the studio in Sydney today.
My 130th flight for the year, I think.
Wow.
I wish I was joking, but no, I'm actually keeping track.
Okay. I mean, and they must be do they still do stamps on passports? They must be running out of places to put it. Erin, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you. You can find out more about the fabulous Erin Holland on her Instagram. We'll have a link in our show notes. Thank you for making the time to finally join me here on the Stellar Podcast.
Thank you for my therapy session.
Come back anytime.